On today's episode of the College Lacrosse Show, we go rapid fire on a whole bunch of games. Maryland loses, Army loses, Harvard, Dartmouth, Princeton, Cornell, lots of big results, Penn State in there. Chat about some FAFO, SICKO. We also do some tier talk. So we put teams into tiers. I have a little miscellaneous list of some stuff like announcers, arenas, stuff that I needed to get off my chest. And then briefly, we look at the upcoming weekend. A really, really fun episode. Looking forward to you listening to it. Let's get right into it. Episode 8 of the College Lacrosse Show. Let's go. All right, hello, welcome back to episode 8 of the College Lacrosse Show. You're Dan Arestia. I'm John Donville, and chaos. Everything is happening here in NCAA Division I lacrosse, which is exactly why we wanted to do this show. So, what's going on, man? A great episode. How are you?
I'm doing good, and yeah, I sat down to do my top 20 ballot on Sunday night. I looked at what I did last week, and I was like, well, half of these teams lost.
You're right.
And including number one, including, the Army is like, a top 5 team. There were like catastrophic losses if you're a fan of a certain team all over the place. And then, the poll comes out on Monday and 5 different teams got at least one number one vote. And I think that to me is a sign that you're having a hell of a lacrosse season, a healthy one at that. So I'm loving where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's hard not to be a broken record because I feel like, to be honest, I feel like you and I have had a pretty good beat on this season from the jump here. Like, no dominant teams. We kind of knew this was going to happen. Maryland, we'll talk about that. The philosophy they were using was just unsustainable for an undefeated level team. They were going to lose at some point, surviving on save margins and stuff like that. So I feel like we've had a good beat on it. And it's just unusual in this post-COVID era to not have these dominant teams. And we're gonna go through some games, and then we're gonna put some teams into some tiers. And I think that'll be a good exercise for us and hopefully for the listeners, just to kind of think about like who are the real contenders we think at this part of the year. So we'll get to it there. I think let's start in College Park, Michigan. Coach Connery and his guys just seem to have the Terps number.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and as I was talking about it earlier in the week, I was like, people like to ask that question, why don't they make the whole plane out of the black box material? Why doesn't Michigan just make every week Maryland?
Yeah.
It seems like if it's Maryland, they're ready to go. They're ready to play their best game. They're dialed. They have a game plan that works. The guys execute. They play a clean game. And I think, you saw kind of a Michigan team that was ranked in the preseason and early in the year that kind of dropped out after having some tough results, kind of be like, we're not to be overlooked here. And I think they kind of set the tone for what a weekend it was in the Big Ten, really, So I think Maryland, as you kind of said in the opening there, I look at Maryland and look, they weren't going undefeated. Yeah. Going undefeated is not something that anybody should be used to happening. Right. It doesn't really happen. So, not surprised to see Maryland take a regular season, in air quotes here, kind of loss. I know we're in a conference play, but, regular season loss. I still think, to me, they're as complete a team as you're going to find in the country. They still got a number one vote this week, which, maybe a little surprising to lose to an unranked team and still get a number one vote. But at the same time,
it's sort of defensible, right? Like they beat Princeton, right? Who's most other teams, they beat Notre Dame on a neutral site. It's
if you put Maryland on the field against anybody in America right now, Maryland's probably going to be the favorite in the game. And a lot of people will probably say, yeah, Maryland's going to win that game. And if you think about it that way, then I guess that makes them still the best team in the country. You play that Michigan game 10 times, Maryland might win 9 of them, but that's not what happened this weekend. So I think, as I said, I still trust Maryland to match up with anybody. I love the way they're built. I think they have a championship level defense and goalie. I think the offense is good. I know they kind of shuffled some pieces around this week a little bit. I feel like I saw Bryce Ford in the tack a little bit, and you saw some guys kind of moving and all that, which is not a crazy thing to do if that's something that's going to be part of your plan for Maryland. In the long term, meaning towards the postseason here, to be able to say we want to play Bryce Ford in the attack, we want to run Kelly out of the box. However you want to be able to do it, then this is where you kind of figure that out, I think. So, Coach Tillman is not winning a championship last weekend. He's trying to win one on Memorial Day. Not to say that ever these games don't matter, but I feel like I didn't learn that Maryland is not a championship team in that game. I still look it up and down that roster and the way they play and the way they were built and say, yeah, that team can win a title.
Yeah, I agree. To be clear, too, I'm not saying that, I probably would have voted the Terps number one last week, but it's just you could talk yourself into an argument for a lot of this stuff, especially if you are someone who cares about RPI, because if you look at RPI, some of the results are going to surprise you. For example, Princeton, I think, is still number one, and Cornell's 7 or 8, and Cornell it didn't crush Princeton, but relatively speaking, they did crush Princeton, and Princeton has the extra loss, and obviously I'm just looking at it through a Cornell lens there, but I'm just saying there's arguments for everybody. But I think what it does show is that none of the good teams are going to want to see Michigan. Michigan is a Big Ten talent level team. Well, not no kidding, they're in the Big Ten, but they have better players than a lot of the other unranked teams do. Cohen is probably going to be a pro. They have other guys who are going to play in the PLL. Hunter Taylor is very good. Obviously made that big save there in overtime, but credit for them. College Park's a hard place to win. Since COVID, I can't think of too many teams that have actually won in that building. I know Army did it in the playoffs, maybe one or two last year, but good for them. Nick Rude scoring the OT winner. We were early on that story as well. I got to do a better job cutting out clips. Evidently. One thing I was thinking, and we'll use this as a transition into this Penn State-Ohio State game, the Big Ten is gross this year. It is structured, ugly lacrosse. The Maryland-Michigan game, I'm obviously a Maryland fan. It was not a great game to watch. If you want some fun lacrosse, go watch the Ivy League right now. Those guys are flying up the field. And the Penn State Ohio State game was ugly. It was structured as could be. It was Iowa versus Nebraska versus Wisconsin football. And if you love punting, then you probably love this game. It was a grind. And I'm not saying that as a they're really good teams, good defenses, good coaching staffs who know what it takes to win in conference play in a tough conference. But aesthetic, it was not.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the football coach's name who said every play I just want 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Penn State, Ohio State was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I was joking during the game was going on. There was a ground ball fight that was physical and disgusting and lasted 25 seconds of game clock. And I was just set this to the announcer and Rocky Ford as being it's a street fight. It's a gutter war. It was just ugly stuff for a while. But when I say it's ugly, you're going to think that means it was a bad game. Not at all the case. Still a great game, just a grinder of a game. And I think for me, the Penn State or the Ohio State, defense is clearly, I think, one of the better ones that you'll find. In terms of individual matchups. Last week, again, I think we nailed it. We said if Ohio State can hold their matchups and they're a defense that is better able to do that than anyone Penn State has seen so far, then they'll have an edge in the 6v6 at that end of the field. And I think you saw that. I didn't see too many matchups where it looked like Penn State had an edge. I know they're banged up. Trainer is not healthy. Lehman is not healthy. Hunter Aquino had his leg wrapped up. They're a banged up group, but Ohio State had the edge at just about every individual matchup. I think it's a credit to their close defense, which we know is awesome. We know Cullen Brown and BVB are special players, but their rope unit has to me become one of the better ones in the country.
Totally.
I think Langermeyer has been outstanding. Those guys are ready for a fight every game out. They being on an island as short stick defensive midfielders. And I think you see something with them that you see if you watch at the pro level, when you watch the Archers play a little bit, is that their poles trust their shorties so much that they look like they're just never, ever going to slide even to a short stick matchup. They're just all these guys can win their matchups all the time.
Yeah, when they're sliding, it's to double team. It's not to support, really.
Right.
It's not to slide and recover. It's to slide and put the ball on the ground and go the other way, which they do a really good job of.
Yeah, yeah. So you see a lot of that with their defense and their offense. I think again last week we kind of called it like Maryland light, where like that they're probably not as talented as maybe Maryland is on offense, top to bottom. But the idea of like, look, there's a good 8, maybe 9 guys that can go on the field and hurt you. I thought Mark Dixon called this great on the broadcast. He was like, they're just going to run 8 guys deep of guys that can hurt you, and like they're going to find the one that you're struggling the most with, who's having the matchup success more than the other guys, and they're going to lean on him. I think you saw a lot of that from Jack McKenna, Connecticut bias, over the weekend, where like Jack picking the ball up as a converted midfielder on the end line and like an invert, he's just getting to 5x5 over and over again, and then it's like I can feed, I can move the ball forward, whatever. And it was just a constant pressure from whatever guy's turn it was on Ohio State's offense to be disruptive. And I think, Ohio State in that regard, like they're just deep enough at both ends where it's tough to find the place where you're going to have an advantage.
Yeah, totally. McKenna was good. That's number 27, right?
Yeah, he's the one who's a mountain. He's 6'6".
Yeah, so I had that in my notes. I love having either an ironically tall or ironically short player on your second line midfield. Like that just seems kind of fun to me. Like kind of reminds me of Matt Lane at Cuse a few years ago, the guy who was like 6'7". I think that was his, was that his name? No. Cuse had like a 6'7" midi for a while. While I was there. It was just awesome. Those guys, like, it's just hilarious to see you out there. And then having just a tiny little jitterbug out there is fun too. Like you want some curveballs on your second line. You don't want to just have it all be good. We're burying the lead here a little bit. Flyok was awesome. And they kept trying to test him from like 13 to 15 yards, and it's just not going to go in. Like you're not going to beat that guy with low angle or with super far out shots. It's not going to happen. You got to get good looks on them. And I thought they settled early. I thought Ohio State actually settled too much as well.
I agree. 2
of the top probably 5 or 10 goalies you're going to see in the country, and there's a lot of like 15-yard shots on the run being taken early in the game. And it's like I wrote in my notes like stop shooting these. They're not going to go in. And Fayok was awesome, and the celly he had as time expired was fucking awesome too. Because I love that the whole team runs off to see the goalie, and the goalie's nowhere to be found.
Just not there.
The goalie's not there. The whole team's like, where do we run now? I don't know.
He's a hard guy to miss too.
Yeah. So he was good, and actually, I want to say as well, like it feels like the level of goaltending this year across the country is like really high. Like we'll talk about the Penn Dartmouth game high. This Penn State Ohio State game, obviously McNaney, Jim Vaccaro, go down the list. Vigu at Richmond. There's a ton of guys. The Princeton kids are
even I was going to say even Croddick, even Army, Sean Byrne, a young kid Army who's setting the world on fire in that. It's tough. I'm supposed to do midseason All-Americans by today, and you're looking at goalie, and you're just like,
yeah, what do you do?
I don't know. I really don't know. Even at number 1, like I'm not sure who the first team All-American goalie is today. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm pulling out my phone because I'm going to set a stopwatch for a minute and a half. We're gonna do this pardon the interruption style. R.I.P. I believe that show's going off the air. Let's talk about this goal review. Okay.
Oh my God.
You go first.
It's insane to me. The thing. All right, we're doing it quick. We have the short clock here, but the thing that's insane to me is that Tambroni's standing there with an iPad, and he's looking at what all of America that's watching the game is seeing on Big Ten Network. The ball hits the bar, it goes down clearly into the goal, and then bounces back out. Tambroni's looking at it. We're all looking at it. The only guy in the building, apparently the only guy in America who doesn't have that angle, is Matt Palem, the one responsible for making the call. Just cannot happen. Cannot happen.
It's hard to believe that they didn't have those angles. It's
insane that he can't just walk over to Tambroni, and Tambroni was like, oh, here's the iPad. Just look. Just look. Right. Like, you have to get that call right. Everybody can see it. And I know it doesn't like decide the game, but man, like that's the only Sunday night linear game this year. And that's one of the only ones where you're going to maybe get the rando who's scrolling through channels who maybe comes across Penn State, Ohio State, and turns it on. And if I'd never seen lacrosse before and I saw that, I'd be like, oh, this is Mickey Mouse. They can't even get, like, this is why this sport is like, still trying to figure it out. Like you just can't have that shit happen. And I thought Terry at IL made a good point that if this is where replay's at, if this is the level that replay has to be at right now, then don't have it. Because if it can't get a call right, then you shouldn't have it at all.
Totally. Almost exactly on time there, by the way. So you got a future kid. Yeah, it sucks. Obviously, the refs aren't intentionally trying to get it wrong. It was a horrible missed call. I've said, I believe even on this show, like, as someone who plays in 2 leagues that have reviews, careful what you wish for because they don't solve as much as you think. But I mean, that was a pretty egregious one, and it looks like it hits the mesh too. That's the weird. It's like it hits the mesh and then it goes down. There's like 3 or 4 parts where you think you can, it feels like you can see it go in, and then. To criticize Penn State a little bit, I don't feel like they ever recovered in the game from that. I felt like they kind of became a little bit unglued after that. And look, I've been part of it. Anyone who's played sports, anyone who's just, had life experience has been a part of, it sucks when you just get royally screwed, which they did. But I felt like the game was kind of over after that. And Penn State was a little bit sloppy, I thought, for a top 5 team at home, a little bit sloppy. And if that Ohio State team is going to punish one thing, it's sloppiness. They especially on like Ohio State's defense. If you're not ready to fucking roll against that team, they're going to kill you. So a good outcome there. We'll talk about more about these teams in the tier talk. Let's go Princeton, Harvard, and I think we both watched about 15 minutes of Harvard BU last night as well, so we can just tie that in. I'll lead this one off. I saw you tweeting last night, I think it was last night, about how Harvard plays some of the best offense in the country. I totally agree. I think they are exceptionally well coached. I believe it's Hutchison as their offensive coordinator, came over from Notre Dame. They are tough, man, and they play great offense. Spidell is awesome. Hopefully going to do some videos about him this week. Really sneaky from behind the net. King is obviously really good, but I mean, King's numbers this week were not great, and they put up a lot of goals on some pretty good defenses. The only thing is, like, and this kind of happens with a lot of teams who play really fast, there's just like 1 or 2 a game where it's like, oh man, just pull that one out. It's like, could you get like 90% of the tempo? But it's hard because it's an attitude that you're infusing in your team. So you don't want to pull back. You don't want to pull back the reins, even though there's 1 or 2 a game. Like there's 1 or 2 in the Princeton game that I thought really hurt them, where they earned a ride back or something like that, and then they shot it right away, and Croddick made a save, or they turned it over, or what have you. But these guys are skilled. They're relatively anonymous on offense, in part because on those gray jerseys, you can't fucking tell what number anyone's wearing on the sidelines, as someone who hasn't watched a ton of Harvard shit this year. So, but I enjoy watching them play. I never thought I'd say that. I enjoy watching Harvard play.
Yeah, I think the way I phrased it was like, it's going to sound dumb when I say it, but Harvard plays offense with 6 guys better than anybody. You see offensive sets sometimes in college that are like, that'll work. Like a Dodger, you have somebody who's like, the guy who's probably going to move the slide guy or try and like, you have a little backside exchange, something like that, like some motion away from the ball. But Harvard has 6 guys impacting every set that they run. And I think it's like, you saw it a ton in the BU game. Like guys were getting lost around the crease by BU left and right. Like Spidell was setting up shop around the pipes and just was open all the time. And BU was not ready to handle the amount of motion that was happening away from the ball that Harvard was hitting him with. I thought, the Princeton game, they did it as well. I thought Princeton's defense, for a unit that I thought was going to get really tested in that game, held up pretty well.
Yeah.
I had mentioned this, but I think, again, if you're looking at like pro prospects, Colin Mulshine's stock goes way up in that game because he did a wonderful job guarding Sam King. I kind of likened it to, there was a year where Michael Sowers was like the top draft prospect, and then he goes and they play Notre Dame, and Jack Keelty wins the matchup, and it's like, all right, I want to draft Jack Keelty. Like, I have all the tape I need. Here he is guarding a first-round attackman and winning. Good. I want that guy. So I thought Colin Mulshine had a wonderful game. To your point about the tempo, I think I agree, but it's tough to, like, change who you are.
It's hard. It's hard.
Like, yeah, Pete Lasagna used to do this at Bates, where he coached his guys to be like, forget numbers. Like, if you are if it's 2-on-4, I don't care. If you have the ball and you see that your guy is like not set up right, and you can see that there is nobody ready to slide or support, even if they have more guys than we do, I don't care. Attack, go, like play and get at the net. It's kind of the philosophy I think of would be really successful in sixes, but Harvard kind of plays that way in field, where it's like if you can identify there's an opportunity, they're not totally ready, they're not set. My matchup sucks. The slide guy in there is a shorty and won't get to me very quickly. Like, attack, go. And I like that about them. You don't want that to change. But to your point, yeah, it means you're probably going to live with a few a game where you're just like, when you turn the film on, like, maybe not that one, but yeah.
Right. And I think the same, it's especially true against a good goalie.
Right.
I can't remember. I think, what did Harvey get to? 11 goals or 10 goals? But Croddick is filthy, man. He's fucking legit. And credit to Madelon for just coaching up these guys. He's had a string of them in a row now. Same with Tills. Like, it's not an accident that the same schools have good goalies over and over again.
And Manhattan. The Jaspers is a goalie farm.
Right, true. That's exactly why I asked you to be on the show for polls like that. Let's talk about Princeton, because you talk about Princeton's defense. We just did a nice soliloquy there on Harvard. Princeton won. They look good.
Right.
They are. I think they're in contention with Harvard for the best six-man offense in terms of the way they play. They're really well coached. I know this from playing with Mitch, playing for Coach Mitchell, the OC. They do a good job of blending. Like some sets, they'll be doing some like very modern kind of freelance stuff, and then they have some kind of run it down your throat midfield stuff. I think while I agree with you that Harvard might have the best kind of six-man motion, Princeton's got to be the deepest group, or they got to be close. I mean, their second-line guys are legit threats. And Bonanno got the start this week, but it's Bonanno, Wade, the kid who slings it, who I'm forgetting his name
Kramer.
now.
Or Kramer, yeah.
Palumbo, Cameron, and another guy, excuse me for missing the name, but those are all legit guys. And Burns, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are obviously not their two best players, who are the two attackmen. So it's a deep group. They hit a lot of shots. Palumbo is awesome. I keep saying that. He's fun to watch. Yeah. He's just a fucking goal scorer. And a good bounce back for Princeton after a tough one against Cornell.
Palumbo is one of those guys where I'm like, man, how many offenses would you be like the superstar on if you didn't go to Princeton and play with this group? Right. I think I don't feel like he gets asked to do a ton of dodging, but I feel like he could. You watch the way he handles the ball after a feed, or he eats contact after he shoots, things like that. You're just like, this guy looks like he's comfortable dodging, and it's just not always part of their scheme because they run as deep as they do. But I feel like he's definitely a star who is a role player at Princeton and is a star for most of the rest of America.
Yeah, and again, he's going to be awesome in the PLL, because when he gets to the PLL, Palumbo, he's going to play the same role he's been playing his whole college career. And I was never the best player on any of my college teams, and that's something that can't be said for really anyone else in the PLL, aside from a few of us. And it, I think I've found it helpful to me, and I think he's going to be a great pro when he gets there. We got a lot of ball left. Mackesy was really good again. He's nails. We should start having a conversation about who's going to finish second in Thornton voting, because I think it's getting out of hand here with the game we'll talk about pretty soon. But yeah, any other? Oh, Princeton's got to clean up their clears. They're just not going to win they're not going to go to a Final Four if they keep throwing the ball away. And by the way, failed clears continue to be a story of the year. No one can clear right now. It's insane.
Yeah, I think that's the place where you get Princeton right now, is they don't clear great, and they haven't been super good facing off.
Yeah.
Or they've been pretty average, I guess, facing off at best.
Yeah.
And those are places where it can be tough to overcome, like those mistakes in those parts in NCAA tournament games. That's kind of where the games get decided, is in the little margins like that. So yeah, it's a good shout that they don't clear super well, and then their face off spot worries me a little bit too, for sure.
Yeah, odd story. McMeekin was significantly better statistically than it was last year than it was this year. That to me screams that he's dealing with some sort of injury. That usually is what the case is. So hopefully for Princeton fans, he can get a turnaround. Kid's a warrior. He's out there battling all game. Okay, let's keep moving. We'll try to go relatively quick here. Again, a lot of good games. So let's go quick through Cornell Yale. I think it's a pretty concise wrap up here. I don't know if were you there?
I was there. I was sitting behind 3 Kirst for this game.
Nice.
Well, I was sitting behind 2 Kirst for most of the game, and then Cole showed up late. I think he was coming straight from NLL game the night before.
Yeah.
Connor wearing some fresh stitches on the chin from from the night before.
Speaking of bad reffing, fucking terrible no call. My God. Go Dogs.
But I think the thing that I took away from that game was, number one, obviously, CJ had 9 goals in the game. He had 8 at halftime. I'm going to take personal responsibility for him not breaking the single game record, because I went to the booth to talk to the ESPN guys about what the single game record for goals was at halftime. And that, I'm sure, was the moment it was decided that he would not be reaching it. It is 11, by the way, held by a few different people, but it is 11 goals in a game. He had 8 on 9 shots in the first half. And I think the thing that was that I loved about it was he didn't dodge in the first half, I don't think once.
No.
And I think it's almost like ballsy, and credit to the Cornell staff for setting it up this way. It's kind of ballsy to just be like, look, Yale's defense can't guard off the ball. Their team defense is not good. So I'm just going to take the best player I have and make him play in the spot where Yale's the worst, where they're not great guarding the interior, and their team defense, their support defense after a slide has really not always been great. So we're just going to do that. We're going to make them guard CJ Kirst as an off-ball weapon, and we're going to let Goldstein feed. Just shake his man, draw a little show slide, and feed. And it worked to the tune of 8 first-half goals. I don't know if I would have the stones on me to have CJ Kirst on my roster and then be like, you're an off-ball weapon this game when he's as dynamic as he is as a Dodger. But I couldn't get enough of the fact that Cornell was doing that and then be like, yeah, and then we'll just beat you with Goldstein, with Kelleher, with these other guys. Long was very, very effective in the first half. I know he got hurt and didn't play in the second half, really. He looked like he had a shoulder injury, so you hope the best for him there. But Cornell was able to do that on offense. They were able to lean on it because Kaskadin had a great day. And, I just couldn't find spots where, Yale had answers. I thought Yale was at their best when Brad Sharp and Max Krevsky were doing the initiating. Krevsky coming out of the box downhill at people is just it's so PLL ready, honestly. He ran through a defender's stick and snapped it in half, and it was all right, slide, dump, goal. And it's if he's just going to do that sometimes because he's so massive. And Sharp's speed, the same way, is like a downhill out of the box midfielder. The two of them in tandem can be such a nice change up from just leaning on their attack. And I really thought both of them, again, when Cornell had the most trouble on defense, it was when Krevsky was coming downhill or Brad Sharp was put his foot in the ground and sweep hard righty and just outrun people. So, I think if you're Yale, maybe you want to see more offense that's centered around those guys, which we probably didn't expect because their names aren't Johnson or Lyons. But those two guys to me were the most dynamic weapons for Yale. But Cornell's offense, I thought the scheme was chef's kiss, was perfectly built to win that game.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. CJ is he's just incredible, man. It's cool to see. It's funny. I was thinking when I played with Wisnauskas, he had this thing where when he was wide open, he would throw a changeup. When you really thought it was he's wide open, here comes the low to high, he would throw a high bouncer. I always thought it was so clever because it was the one time the goalies would expect it. When CJ gets wide open, he's I'm going to break the net. I'm going to fucking put a hole in the corner as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And he does the low to high thing where he falls, his feet aren't even on the ground. He's just it's he's levitating towards the net. And it's so awesome, man. I love it. And he had a couple of them, and man, he can sling it.
Yeah, it's like watching Gary Sheffield swinging out of his shoes. I'm gonna send this thing 10 rows deep into the upper deck.
My brother and I are actually just booked tickets, you'd be proud to know, to see Creed play in Hartford. And
oh my God.
that is the Lacrosse version of Creed. CJ Kirst just catching it and fucking levitating towards the net.
I need to slow motion him shooting with the clip of the guy on TikTok who starts singing higher in slow motion with CJ letting the shot go.
Yes. Can you I won't do it for our viewers, but anyways, I love watching that kid. Love watching that kid play. Have one more Cornell point to make. I saved it for another section here. Let's go quickly on Penn and Dartmouth. It's hard for people to understand, I think, who don't follow the Ivy League that closely, like how impressive this little run is for Dartmouth. Like this has not happened in a long, long time for Dartmouth to be winning big time Ivy games on the road. Now I understand Penn is probably at least the fourth best team in the Ivy this year, but ranked road victories for Dartmouth that weren't a fluke. Like this is, I don't think people realize how much of a turnaround this is for Coach Kerwin. They were just as good as Penn in that game. This was not a fluke at all. They have good players, they have big athletes, and an early statement win here for Coach Kerwin.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Ivy over the last 15 years, everybody kind of takes a turn near the top of it. Like sometimes it's Cornell, sometimes it's Yale, Princeton, Harvard gets up there, Penn has their years, but even, Brown obviously too, but it's it's the six teams that take turns rotating through who's the best. And then Dartmouth has just kind of always just kind of been down there, struggling to push their way up. And it's just a different looking Dartmouth team. They won this game basically without Hopper Zappitello. So they're down a starting attackman because, he has the tough knee injury there, and you hope he's okay, but that was not fun to watch that happened to him. But I look at this the Dartmouth team, and I'm like, it's another group where they can manufacture goals really well. It didn't matter a whole ton that Lavelle took power away, because I thought it took McGill till late in the game to really, I think, start finding some openings. But when he did, he was effective. They weren't scared of going against a defense that's really good and a goalie that's really good. Like they executed their offense and it was well designed and they did enough to win the game. I thought they got great goaltending play. I think you mentioned it before. Mason Morrill, I think, was at 64% in the game. He was awesome. There's going to be a FAFO from this game. I can tell you that. We'll save that for later. But I thought this Dartmouth team is, like you said, not a fluke. They're fun to pick right now because they're genuinely really good. Like they have a lot of players on offense that can do some damage. They got some young guys who have been excellent. I think Paradine remains like one of their better and kind of uncelebrated, I guess, players on like a national level. I think he's great. I said Power has kind of been dynamic for them from behind the goal. Lavelle, I thought, probably won the matchup, but Power, did enough. Like I said,
he made some plays.
Game.
He didn't look scared at all.
He made some plays for them. And with Penn, it's like, I kind of said it on Sticks In this week, but if I'm watching a Penn game and the other team hits 10, I'm probably changing the channel. I just don't see, it's not like they can't, but it's like I don't know if they know who they give the ball to in overtime, like right there.
They don't.
You know what I mean?
They don't. I had that marked down. They don't have much of a, they don't feel like they have a great identity right now. And they also foul a ton and some really stupid fouls. And, not that I'm grinding Ivy League penalty data, but they kept bringing up on the broadcast how Penn is the most penalized team by a mile. And it showed in the game and it hurt them. You can't be bad on offense and then just give teams extra shots at it. The play of the game was Zappitello gets hurt. A non-contact knee injury. We've anyone who's been around long enough to know those are what they are. His brother's the coach, so that sucks. See Ajax out there, that sucks. And then they call it so the play gets dead. They have to get him off the field, and then they blow the whistle. And you're thinking, okay, there's been a nice little run for Dartmouth here. They hung tough with Penn on a Friday night. The best player gets hurt, or one of the best players gets hurt. Here we go. And Power comes right out of the timeout, split dodge, takes the big little pick, and it seems like he hits every post in the net as it goes in. And it was just like, such a hell yeah, and they just got right back on track. And credit as well to Coach Kerwin and his staff for Power. They said is a transfer. good for them using some of the advantages Dartmouth has. Some of the Ivy Leagues can't bring in transfers like at all. Like schools like Princeton, I think they get like 5 for the whole school, and they're like Rhodes Scholar astronauts that get let in. And like Cornell gets one every couple of years. It's a kind of a grind administratively. So Dartmouth goes and gets a transfer from Power from Colorado College, who's a real difference maker. Like, awesome. That's a really good job of the entire administration and coaching staff getting it done. And then the last note I had was 19 on Dartmouth. Gogan is really, really good. The LSM close defender. I think he should be on people's watch list here. I'm probably going to put out a video about him. He was really filthy off the ground on that one. And that last note I had just kind of a funny one, not chirping the kid, but 48 on Penn Till. He takes the Tucker Durkin approach where if you just slash every time, they're not going to call a slashing penalty. And it's like every one of these is a slash. These are going 12-6.
If you set the baseline at just like giant hack, then it's like you have to go beyond that to earn a slash.
Right. It's the was it the Bill Lambier for the Pistons? If I just foul every play, they're not going to call a foul on me every play. He does that. So, for all the psychology majors out there, can get into the psychology of refereeing. Okay, we're not really going to talk about the Army BU game. I watched a bit of it. Pretty like sloppy, weird game. BU does it again and then drops. They basically don't show up for their Tuesday game against a ranked Harvard team that really could have helped them. I watched a lot of the game. I didn't really have any notes other than Army's broadcast. Their announcer is awesome. He's got all these one-liners in there. So that's really my big takeaway. I know it's probably not what we're going to hear.
No, he was great. I would say, speaking of broadcast, Penn, I'm begging you, stop doing the light flickering thing after you score a goal.
I actually had that. I had that.
It's got to stop. Gettysburg does it too. Like, it's got to stop. You're killing me. I'm a guy who gets migraines and vertigo. I can't watch your games. It's bad. Please stop.
I made a list called miscellaneous thoughts. Here, your viewers can see my yellow my yellow legal pad. Okay, miscellaneous thoughts. These are things that don't have anything to do with lacrosse. First one, Penn's light show is stupid. If you're gonna play a light show, you have to fucking win the game. I don't know what you want me to tell you. 2, Harvard should play in the Coliseum. I know it's not what it's called. I don't think it's what it's called. Harvard should play in Harvard Stadium. And all the people coming at Maryland for the Big Ten Plus, way up in the clouds, go at Harvard for being on field level on the broadcast. I can't see anything. BU should schedule a bye weekend after Army every year.
That's probably a good look.
And probably like a wellness retreat as well.
Yeah.
Some sort of like
some IV fluids and a bye week.
Yeah. Some sort of a team-wide juice cleanse for BU. Princeton's broadcast, one of the best in the whole entire country. So prepared, very knowledgeable, didn't miss anything. And there's one time when they missed what happened on the field, and the color commentator said, "I'm not sure, I missed that." Refreshing, because so many times they just get it wrong and they throw it out there. Princeton playing the Freebird remix as their goal song. It's kind of nice, but overused. And as a reminder, Canada won the Four Nations Cup, so do with that what you will. Okay, I'm kind of rolling here. Tynan Walsh on Penn is apparently coming back from an injury, so he's just playing man up. I'm not really sure the specifics there, but he did score ahead of an assist. Just a cool moment for him, so shout out there. And then last, most importantly, Cornell black jerseys are sick. They are
the black on
legit.
Black for Cornell. I was like, I saw them putting them on and coming out and everything, and I was like, Johnny Cash, like, you look like you're dressed for a funeral. Like, maybe I am. Like, that's what that felt like when they were like, we're here for a funeral.
I was about to tell a story that I probably should keep private, but Cornell black jersey sick. Hey, STX, get the boys some black helmets, some black gloves. Let's go all black for some of these big games down the stretch. But I love them.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would say about the BU Army game is I was surprised because BU is very young and does not have a ton of experience. Army is not. Army has a lot of experienced players on both ends of the field. I thought at home, Army, like, experience carries the day, and those guys at BU might not be ready for what Army was throwing at them. Credit to those the young guys that BU has for not being afraid for 1 second in that game.
Yeah, Army took the idea that shooting on the empty net is a good strategy against the 10-man way too literally. It is a good strategy. Of like absent of other strategies. You still try something else first.
Yeah, the thinking is always if you get in trouble, the net is never a bad place to put it.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is. Yeah. Okay, let's do a little bit of tier talk here. So I think let's start at the top. So you had the great ideas here for the tiers. So the first tier is see you in Foxborough, basically teams we think are going to make the Final Four. I took this as teams I think, like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, teams, I have more than 4 teams, basically, in this category is what I'm saying. So let me tell you what I have, and you tell me if I have 5. How many do you have?
I have 4.
Okay. Cornell, Maryland.
Not Princeton. Like on purpose, like I'm picking a Final Four. I ended up just only putting 4 in here.
I have Cornell, Maryland, Princeton, Notre Dame. And
I have Okay, who's your 5th?
UNC.
Oh, my 4th is Ohio State. I got the Buckeyes in there. So I have Maryland, Cornell, Princeton. I think that seems to be everybody's right now. Like, in some order, these are the 3 best teams in the country. They feel like they're above the others. I know Ohio State came 3rd in the poll this week, and they got the 2nd most number 1 votes. They got 3 number 1 votes this week. So I have them in there because I might have just some recency bias of the way they just played against Penn State and think like, yeah, that's a championship team going on the road and doing that. So I think Maryland, Cornell, Princeton are the obvious ones. And then it's like the other teams, my in the next tier down, I have all of yours right there. But my 4 were Maryland, Cornell, Princeton, Ohio State. See you in Foxborough.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I just think, like, I wrote an article a few weeks ago about how elite offenses get to the championship, like win championships. And so I kind of took, like, at least statistically, I thought I kind of bumped Cornell, Princeton ahead of those. Like, I held Ohio State back a little bit, although I'm sure if I looked at the numbers.
No, you were right. If you're looking at elite offenses, Ohio State's not going to measure up with the teams you put in there.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of these teams have to figure out is, and it hurt Penn State in the Ohio State game, and it actually hurt Maryland too. If you're one of these by committee offenses, in overtime, what do? That's really the issue. Yeah. Or fourth quarter, you fucking need one. I'm going right back to swearing too much, by the way, on this episode. I'm just jazzed up. You need one. It's tough. And Jared Bernhardt was the ultimate example of that. It's like, you need one, just give it to Jared, and he'll get you a look that is going to be really good. And I worry about with that with some of these teams. Like, Princeton's got options. Cornell's got options. Like, when it comes down to it, Maryland is going to have to solve that problem.
I think Maryland has one. I'm going to tell you, Eric Spanos is that guy in Maryland right now.
Okay.
He has had clutch gene. The numbers aren't what the other guys are, like in total points, but I think he's got the clutch gene goals for them this year. They need one. He's getting it for them.
Yeah. It feels like he only scores big ones. Okay, one of the teams let's go to the next tier. Don't cancel your hotels. This was well named by you. I have 4: Ohio State, Penn State, Army, and Duke. And then because I had UNC in the first category, I think those are just the 4. I'm going with that one.
I have 5 in this category. Don't cancel your hotel rooms yet. Notre Dame, Penn State, UNC, Duke, and Syracuse.
Yeah, Cuse was right there for me. I actually did this literally in pencil, and I erased Cuse. Old school. They're close. Just got to see them beat a good team. And
I think this week is big for them.
Yeah,
I think this week is really big for them.
And scheduling Manhattan pisses me off in the middle of the season, for reasons that I can't explain. I don't know why.
It's the John O'Derna Bowl.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we pretty much have the same.
I think it's some grouping that of like, again, that's basically.
Wait,
like
did you have Duke?
10.
Do you have Duke in?
I have Duke and don't cancel your hotel room, but they were the last team I put in there.
Okay.
I almost punished Duke pretty damn hard this week for the loss to Denver. I was doing my ballot, and in one iteration of it, I had Duke at 20. Like I dropped them all the way down, just because I was like, everybody else has better wins and kind of just looks better. And like, you played a bad game this week. It's just not a week where you could do that.
Right.
I did pick Denver to win the game. Shout out to me. But I did not love what I saw from Duke in that game. Going scoreless for that long, like it was just, and this is that time of year where you're used to seeing Duke turn it up, not lay an egg. So I ended up putting Duke somewhere in like the mid-teens, but I was like, man, that was just not a confidence instilling game for me watching Duke.
Okay, so the last two categories we have, or we may not win, but we will ruin your day, and also in the hunt. And I actually wasn't sure which one was supposed to be above the other. so I have two in the hunt. That's Hopkins and Cuse. Like they're talented teams,
right? Yeah, in the hunt is like.
Year.
In the hunt is like when they show during NFL season, they'll show like the playoff picture on TV. It's like division leaders and like who's going to clinch a bye. Then over here, it just says in the hunt. And it's a bunch of teams that are around 500 that need a lot of things to go right. And they could make it like that's in the hunt. It's like, we're not eliminating you, but might need some help.
So I had those teams. I had the in the hunt ahead of we may not win, but we'll ruin your day. Cause
they're
still
ahead
good.
of.
And Hopkins and Cuse, I think, could still make some noise if they get it going. Cuse especially's got to get healthy. Okay, who'd you have in the hunt?
In the hunt, I have Harvard. I have 6 teams in the hunt right now. I have a bloated in the hunt tier. I have Harvard, Hopkins, St. Joe's, Georgetown, Dartmouth, and Fairfield are all in the hunt.
Okay, I actually made some of my own categories, subcategories. One is wait, they play lacrosse Memorial Day, and that's Dartmouth. Dartmouth
yes,
is in
exactly.
Like, wait, what? There's lacrosse that weekend?
I'm telling, like, if Dartmouth makes the Ivy League tournament, are you surprised right now? I'm not.
No, they're probably the fourth best
top 4
team.
team in the Ivy. They could be there. So I think that puts them in the hunt conversation. And Fairfield has to be. They haven't lost yet. Like
Fairfield was in the who cares? We'll watch the Sea Grape anyways. That was that was my own. They get their own tier too. They're not.
Yeah,
I'll
just wander back to my house on the beach and then just like stumble over to the Sea Grape to watch some Memorial Day ball.
Yeah, or the fans will be like, oh, they're playing on Memorial Day. Cool, we'll pop in for 2 hours at the Sea Grape, then we'll go right back to the beach. So then sounds like we kind of got our tiers mixed up here. We didn't read the manual.
No, I think we're both dead on. Actually, I think we are very like that. I don't think any of those teams that I just mentioned are season over, but we can ruin yours. Like, I think St. Joe's is legitimately like a really good team. I think they're like they beat everybody in Philly. They keep beating good teams. Their defense is great. They found pieces on offense that are playing really inspired lacrosse, even though they graduated maybe the best group of offensive weapons the program's ever had. But they find a guy like Ben Dutton, who's a freshman who can't stop scoring goals. St. Joe's, I think, is legit. I think them and Richmond are going to battle as Richmond is also kind of, to me, like an in the hunt kind of team. Like your scenario of a 2-team A10 that we talked about last week is kind of looking less crazy all the time.
Yeah, the win for Richmond over Georgetown really helped. I think Richmond's the best of that crew. Richmond, so in the may not win but ruin yours. I had Richmond, Harvard, Michigan, St. Joe's, and then Dartmouth for real. Even though I just threw a little shade at them. Richmond has proven against all the best teams that they are shitty to play against. Now they haven't beaten many of those teams, so I think they're actually a perfect example of this category. St. Joe's is just miserable to play against. They're always miserable to play against. They're massive. Their coach Taylor Ray is a great coach. He's intense. He's mean. He was a prick to play against. His teams are hard to play against. It's good. Michigan just beat the number 1 team on the road. They have elite level players that counts. And then Harvard, that offense is just going to catch, and that pace. If you're not ready to play against Harvard, look out. They're coming, and they're not scared of you. So I think they all fit pretty well into that category.
We may not win, but we're going to ruin your season. I have Michigan. I have Virginia in this tier.
Just due for one at some point?
Just looming in ACC play to just give somebody a loss that sucks. I have Denver in here because they might have just done this to Duke. I have Yale in here as like,
Yeah.
we might just show up and score 18 on you, and like we'll win. We might just win an 18-17 game in here
Yeah.
somewhere. And then I have everybody in the Patriot League because they're
Yeah,
all
yeah.
just going to destroy each other's seasons. It's what happens every year. They're
Right.
all like, they're all good enough to beat each other, and only one team is going to come out of the league. They're all
Right.
just going to end each other's seasons again.
Right. Yeah, Loyola is looking for some W's out there. Say that.
Somebody told me I was in a group chat last week, and I said, if you're not taking the underdog in every Patriot League game all season, you're missing out. And somebody goes, yeah, except for like Lafayette, right? And I was like, Lafayette's beating Loyola right now. So yeah, even Lafayette. Always take the Patriot League underdog.
Yep, disclaimer, I don't gamble. Yeah. Okay, I think we're good there. Yeah, I had Virginia in its own category, which is take a year off, see the relatives this year. A lot of Memorial Day trips for the
Mentally in
Cavaliers.
Montauk.
Right. Yeah. Go to, like, maybe the category should be called like, have you guys heard of the beach? Like,
I know.
Have you been to Secrets? It's awesome. You'll be back. Virginia will be back, but doesn't look like this year. And there's lots of fun things to do on Memorial Day. Come to Albany, PLL training camp in Albany. I know that's probably where people want to be on Memorial Day. Okay. Wow. We're 50 minutes into this. Holy shit. Okay, let's go FAFO, F around, and find out. I have one and only one. Lavelle versus Kirst. I cannot wait. They are going to try to kill each other, and Kirst is playing as well as he's ever played. Lavelle has given him troubles in the past. Lavelle is a beast. Deserves all the respect that he gets. And last time these two played, Kirsty basically got knocked out and refused to come out of the game even for a second. It is going to be awesome.
I've got two, and they're both pretty quick. Number one, Alex Jesse at Dartmouth gets a FAFO for scoring the OT game winner against Penn, and then hitting the throw the glove in the air and shoot it down Selly on ESPN. You definitely get a FAFO for that. And my other FAFO is everybody who wanted instant replay in college lacrosse.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Where do you rank the throw the glove up and shoot it versus the just straight backflip?
I think the backflip is better. I think there are fewer people out there who can do the backflip than can do the throw the glove in the air. So I think the backflip rates higher as a celebration.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll keep ranking them. Send us your OT goals. Nick Rude, Michigan, acting like he's been there before. Nothing crazy. Just the old come see me boys. Love that too. If anyone's seen me score in overtime before, I do not act like I've been there before. So good for Nick. Okay, SICKO game of the week. I don't have any. There's so many games to prepare for this week. I don't know. Watch whatever you want. It's conference play. I got nothing, man. I had no idea.
I've got two that are pretty gross. Lehigh Loyola is very much a SICKO. That game's disgusting. Lehigh's 2-6. Loyola is winless in 8 games.
Gross.
They are the bottom 2 teams in the Patriot League. Lehigh and Loyola are the 2 worst teams in the Patriot League right now. I think we just said this conference is impossible. It always destroys itself. It's the Hunger Games. Like, neither one of these teams, though, is used to being down there. So you'll get maybe some angry play, some inspired play. And then I got Bellarmine, Utah. A-Sun's a 1-bid league. Utah has beat Ohio State and nobody else. They have not won since that game. So Bellarmine is
not like nobody good. Literally nobody else.
No wins. Literally no wins. They're 1-7, and the one is Ohio State.
Yeah. That's
this college lacrosse season in a nutshell. But Utah is at the bottom of the A-Sun. Bellarmine is at the top. I think Utah, like we said, A-Sun's a 1-bid league, but if Utah wants to get serious about A-Sun play or start making a difference, they need to beat Bellarmine this week. So you get a good SICKO, couple of good conference SICKO games in the A-Sun and the Patriot League this week.
Okay, wonderful. That's why we keep you around. By the way, there was someone that commented on our 2 episodes ago that I saw. They commented right before last episode saying, you guys better talk about the Lemoyne Dolphins. And I'm like, just wait, buddy. just wait. Do we have some Dolphins talk for you? So that YouTuber, thank you. Thank you for listening, liking, subscribing, commenting. But give us some flowers. We talked about your Dolphins. I
We
don't think
shouted about it in a big way.
I don't think any of the thousands of other college lacrosse podcasts talked about the Lemoyne Dolphins last week, but we did.
No.
We did. So give us some flowers. Okay. A bunch of good games, other good games this week. There's too much good lacrosse going on. Let's. I'm gonna put UVA on the bench. We talked about them. Nantucket's beautiful this kind of time of year. let's talk about Maryland and Maryland Penn State. Right? Sorry, I just had it.
Maryland Penn State this weekend.
So both coming off a loss. Yeah.
Yeah, both coming off a loss. I think if you're a Penn State fan, the thing that makes you nervous is that, I've called Ohio State kind of Maryland light on a couple of different ways. And like, if you didn't like the way your team looked last week against the way that defense plays, the way they hold their matchups, and the way they kind of can go deep and beat you on offense, like Penn State, you got to get ready to play the same game against a team that probably does it a little bit better than Ohio State does it this week. Yeah. So it's a really tough turnaround for Penn State. I think a key for them is getting healthy. We all know like Trainer is not 100%. He had made great plays, but he's not healthy. Layman's not healthy. Aquino is their best midfielder. He's not healthy. Like you're going to need to find a way to get some goals beyond those guys if they can't go in a meaningful way. And it's going to be tough because Maryland's defense is extraordinary. Their rope unit's really good. They're probably they're like just a little bit better than Ohio State in all of those spots. And they play the same kind of game. Like they're just going to grind you down and they can beat you. And Maryland can run a little bit better than Ohio State can too. So like if you're Penn State, it's tough because again, you got to get ready to play the same kind of game against a team that's better at it than the team that just beat you doing it.
Yeah, they gotta be better in like the sub games. Ohio State runs all these like complicated sub patterns, and then they never throw the ball. Like they never actually they scheme these guys up for these advantages. And I actually think that was smart in that game because like they're just kind of control the tempo and just really drag you into the deep end. But Maryland, if we've seen anything from Maryland post-COVID, if you give up those sub advantages, Maryland is going to play those out. They're going to throw them. Everyone handles it. Everyone has the green light, so they got to be buttoned up in that stuff. Can't allow defensive goals. More defensive goals from Maryland last week. McDonald scored again. A 6 save by Hunter Taylor. So they're going. The big problem with Trainer being unhealthy is not that he's ineffective. He's just not out there a ton. Like he has to take more shifts off because he's clearly banged up, which I think really hurts. And they gotta get a little more organized offensively. Penn State. I just don't think they had a great feel for what they want to do, and as is a recurring theme on the podcast, would love to see a little more behind the goal stuff from them. It's a lot of midfield dodging, and it's tough against good goalies to score unassisted midfield goals. I think that's a pretty good trend around the country. Army UNC, maybe the first time Army gets the big TV this year, I would say, and we'll see. If they lose this one, that they're going to tank, and they have a chance to show that BU was just a real fluke than some team that has their number. But I think a lot of folks looking to really see what Army's made of this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go up to Mikey Stadium for this one. I love going to West Point for games. If you've never been there, it is
spot.
Gorgeous up there. It's even the ride there rules. Go to Andy's for breakfast in the morning and then go over to the stadium. It's a wonderful time. But I think for this one, we say it every year, but Army's strength of schedule is never great. Like they really need to beef up the non-con opponents because like their strength of schedule is always in like the 30s somewhere. And so you get in a place where you lose to BU, even though it's a conference opponent, and it's all of a sudden like, all right, that's it. You're at largest shot. Like, you got to beat UNC this week if you're going to have any chance at it. Otherwise, you got to go out and win like the Patriot League, which is just a madhouse. So I think for this one, I'm looking for, I assume Pilot is going to cover Duffy. And then, the thing with me all year for UNC is can you consistently get scoring from down the roster kind of guys? If Pilot wins that matchup, you know what I mean? And can you get more from Petramala, not just as a shooter? Can you get stuff from English in the midfield? Can Harshberger's freshman year go really well? Like, what are you going to get from guys like your portal guys like Dupuis in this game? How do you kind of create offense if your top weapon's not going. They've had games where they've done it this year. They've had games like the Hopkins game where they've shown that it doesn't matter. We can just win with these two guys anyway. But that's what I'm going to look for in this game. Is Army is always a well-coached defense. Their personnel is always good. They're always good in goal. Like, it doesn't matter who's out there. They're just always going to be good. So I want to see what Carolina can do in terms of depth of scoring in this game after, Pilot and Duffy kind of have their fight.
Yeah, we did a matchup video on Pilot and Duffy last year. Duffy got after him pretty good, but it was one of the most like eventful matchup videos I've ever seen. Like, I think Duffy had like 5 points and 5 turnovers. Like, every time he was going, he was either beating Pilot or Pilot was putting it on the ground. So I think that's a win for Carolina. Like, goals are more important than turnovers at that kind of margin. At least as it pertains to going against one of the best defenders in the country. So they'll take that. So curious if Pilot turns the risk down just a little bit, and he's going to have to cover. Like, a lot of these best defenders, especially when they get kind of the aura around them, they don't get a lot of work. The Duffy's going to have to go right at him. Carolina's not going to be scared, and that should be a good one. Speaking of the big TV, if it's not Army UNC, it'll probably be the first time Duke is on the big TV for a lot of folks. And they take on Notre Dame in a game of, who's legit here. And these ACC teams feels like have kind of slid under the radar a little bit, which is sort of unusual. But it's time to figure out what we actually have in these two teams.
Yeah, I think that's the great way to put it. Is both of these teams are looking to solve a problem somewhere on their offense, probably, that's like, we need an answer to this question. Notre Dame, we need to figure out who your third attackman is, who's going to produce in that spot. Whoever that ends up being, like, this is the game where you probably need to figure that out. Duke needs to kind of figure out where we're going to get production from the midfield. I think Sloat's playing more attack lately, but who's going to produce for us in the midfield? And is that going to be a place where we can count on production as we get into, April and May? I think an edge here kind of might go to Duke in that I still consider their rope unit and their short stick D-midi pair of Gray and McGuire to be the best in the country.
Yep.
And I think that's what you need to have to give Notre Dame a hard time. You're going to probably pull Faison, but like, you have two shorties who can guard two other guys who are probably pull worthy for a lot of people, whether it's Angrick or whoever. Might be McLean unless he's playing attack. Who knows who's going to be out there. Again, this is where you need to figure that out. But this is a really important game for both these teams, because like I said, like, if you're serious about Memorial Day weekend, you need to figure out where these kind of questions are, and you need to answer them like now that we're in conference play.
Yeah, not quite now or never, but we're getting there for certain. Especially, again, for years the ACC has relied on late season wins, conference wins that can kind of shift your RPI or give you an at-large spot in one kind of fell swoop. But looking at it, I was just looking at it before we go here. I mean, ACC teams I guess there's still 4 in the top 10, so you still have that opportunity. But RPI wise, at least Duke's RPI is higher than their rankings. So, but they're still up there. They still have time to get some big wins. But Duke's gonna have to beat somebody here because their at large has a potential to slip.
Yeah, I mean, it's how it is always. We lament the ACC every year for only having 5 teams, so it's only at larges that come out of the conference. There's no AQ. I don't know if it's a 4-bid league this year. We'll see the way. Like, if we get the 2-bid A10, we're shaping up to have kind of a weird bubble thing happening.
A 3 at least Ivy. It looks like maybe 4.
Yeah, if you think Cornell, Princeton, and
Harvard, maybe Dartmouth, depending what happens.
Dartmouth wins the Ivy. What happens then? Yeah. That's when things get crazy.
Yeah, that feels a little crazy.
That is a little crazy. They're in the hunt. What can I tell you? But yeah, I think, Duke RPI of 5, Notre Dame RPI of 7, like, the winner of this game is going to feel comfortable about their RPI and their at-large chance. The loser is going to feel a little more dicey. Notre Dame's only going to be, they haven't played a ton of games. They're going to be 4-3 if they lose, right? Sitting around 500 with an RPI that's probably going to be just outside the top 10 if they lose, maybe. I don't know. Like, kind of a scary spot to be as the calendar flips to April.
Yeah. No doubt about it. it's starting to get to bracketology season. Like you can start to cross teams off, and teams are going to start knowing their identity. Especially for leagues that have to make their conference tournament. Like Penn has got some work to do here, as just an example, and still some big non-con sitting out there as well. There's still a Cuse, a Cornell game sitting out there, and some other big ones as well. So lots of good stuff to watch. We've gone for over an hour here. I think that was a fantastic episode. You'll be heading up to West Point. I have been there, never got to play there. That's probably, I think the number one place I never got to play that I would have loved to was Klockner. I think West Point is probably number 2. It's certainly up there. Rutgers would have been cool to play at. Never got to play there. Speaking of, that was probably the one cool light show when the Rutgers was really rolling, and they would wear black and have a light show. But I'm trying to think what else. I never get to play Navy at Navy. I have played once at Navy, but that I think is the best venue in the sport besides Maryland Stadium and Showcloth Field, of course. So,
oh man, we didn't even talk about the fact that Rutgers beat Hopkins this week. Like
we couldn't get
right
to it.
Past it.
We couldn't get to it. Another goalie school, like the Caden Stoller kid is. I think that's forgive me if I screwed up that name, but man, it's
Carden Stoller. Caden is the Kirst kid that's there.
I know. God. Oh man, too many Scarlet Knights. I got too many Scarlet Knights in my life between Kirst, Ethan Rawl, and some other beauties. So
they were over the moon in the stands at the Yale game, watching CJ do what he was doing. As I told them that Rutgers had just beaten Hopkins. They were like, it was like I just told them we landed on the moon. Like it was, they were, having the time of their lives.
Well, they had the same reaction when you say like the pizza's here. I ordered you a Bud Light, and they're happy people. So that's great. Well, glad you had a good weekend at Yale, and good luck this weekend. And thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.